Man, I've worked my whole life just to have a roof over my head. I ain't asking for much, just some peace, some quiet, and a place to rest after all the years I've put in. But you know what hurts? When people look at you, see your skin, and already decide you don't belong here. Derek Johnson muttered these words under his breath as he set down a cardboard box on the front porch of his modest two-story home. The house wasn't flashy. White siding, small porch swing, a patchy lawn he was slowly fixing up, his pride and joy. It had taken him 15 years of saving, grinding at 2 jobs, sacrificing vacations, dinners, even sleep, to finally call this place his own. He glanced up at the cloudy sky, his hands trembling slightly. "This is mine. Nobody can take it away from me," he whispered, trying to convince himself. But the sound of heavy boots crunching on gravel broke his fragile moment of peace. 2 men walked toward him. Black caps, navy blue jackets with bold white letters stenciled across the back. HOA Enforcement Division. They looked official, carried clipboards, and had walkie-talkies clipped to their belts. But something about them was off. Their uniforms mismatched, their badges flimsy, like something bought online. One of them, tall and sharp-eyed, called out, "Mr. Johnson, you've been served notice. Effective immediately, you're being evicted from this property for violations of community standards." Derek froze, his voice catching in his throat. "What? Evicted? I paid my mortgage. This is my home. Ain't nobody told me nothing about no violations." The shorter man smirked. "Trash cans visible on collection day, paint not compliant with HOA guidelines, grass height exceeding regulations. Should I keep going?" He tapped the clipboard with his pen, grinning like he enjoyed it. "That's nonsense," Derek shot back. "I've been here 3 months, and nobody said a word. You can't just show up and tell me to leave." The tall one stepped closer, his tone sharp. "We're the authority here. Pack your bags, or we'll make you pack them." Derek's jaw clenched. Memories flashed. His father telling him as a boy, "Son, there'll be people who'll think you don't belong, no matter how hard you work. But you stand your ground, always." He took a deep breath, his chest rising with pride and defiance. "This is my house. You can wave all the fake papers you want, but you ain't pushing me out," the shorter man sneered. "Fake? You calling us liars?" "I'm calling you cowards," Derek said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "Real men don't bully people out of their homes." The taller man reached into his pocket, flashing what looked like a badge, though the emblem was blurred, cheap. "Last warning. Leave now, or we'll have you dragged out." For a moment, silence thickened the air. Derek could feel his heart pounding, the weight of decades of prejudice pressing down. But before he could respond, the rumble of a black SUV echoed down the street. Then another, then another. Doors slammed. Boots hit the pavement. 6 men approached in formation, broad shoulders, purposeful strides, their presence commanding without a single word. They weren't wearing uniforms, but their posture gave them away. They were warriors. Their eyes carried stories of deserts, jungles, oceans, places most men never see. One of them, built like stone, stepped forward. His voice was calm but unshakable. "Gentlemen, is there a problem here?" The 2 so-called HOA officers froze, glancing nervously at the newcomers. The shorter one stammered, Who are you?" The leader of the group looked them dead in the eye. "We're his friends, and you're standing on the wrong porch." Derek blinked in shock. "Wait, Marcus? Is that you?" The man cracked the faintest smile. "Yeah, brother. Been a long time." The 2 imposters shifted uncomfortably. "This is official business," the tall one said, though his voice faltered. "Stay out of it." One of the SEALs stepped closer, his face inches away from the fake badge. "Official? That's a toy. You think you can intimidate a man out of his home with a costume and some lies?" He shook his head slowly. "You picked the wrong target." The imposters exchanged a glance, suddenly less confident. The shorter one muttered, "We'll be back." before they both retreated down the street, disappearing as quickly as they came. Derek exhaled, his knees almost buckling with relief. I don't understand. How did you... Why are you here? Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. Because you stood your ground, Derek. And nobody gets to take from a man what he's earned. The other SEALs nodded in silent agreement, their eyes fierce but full of respect. Derek swallowed hard, emotion welling in his chest. I thought I was alone. Marcus's voice softened. You're never alone, brother. Not when you've lived with honor. Not when you've fought your battles the right way. People will always try to push you down. But sometimes, the right ones show up when you least expect it. For the first time in years, Derek felt the weight on his shoulders lift. Not because his struggle was over, but because he realized he wasn't fighting it by himself anymore. The quiet of the street settled again, broken only by the sound of Derek's shaky breathing. He leaned against the porch rail, his palms sweaty. The imposters had vanished, but their threat lingered like a shadow. Marcus squeezed his shoulder. You okay? Derek shook his head slowly. I don't even know what just happened. Those guys, they weren't real, were they? One of the SEALs, a man with a scar running down his cheek, spoke for the first time. His voice was rough but steady. Fake as a $3 bill. No HOA has an enforcement division. That's intimidation. Straight up. Derek rubbed his forehead. But why me? I'm nobody special. I just bought this house, trying to start fresh. Why would they come after me? The tallest SEAL in the group crossed his arms. Because predators look for people who stand alone. They think you'll fold, but they didn't count on you having a backbone. Derek looked at him, his voice breaking. I was about to lose it, man. If y'all hadn't shown up... Marcus cut him off. Don't finish that sentence. You stood tall. That's all that matters. He paused, then glanced at the others. We didn't just show up by chance, Derek. We came because we heard... Heard what? Derek asked, confused. Marcus looked him dead in the eye. Word travels fast in our circles. A couple of guys pretending to be authority, running scams, targeting good people. When I found out one of those targets was you, I made some calls. The team came running. The scarred SEAL nodded. We don't leave our own to fight alone. Derek swallowed hard, his chest heavy. He hadn't seen Marcus in over a decade. They'd grown up in the same neighborhood, played ball on cracked courts, walked the same dusty streets. But while Derek had gone to the factories, Marcus had gone to the Navy, and eventually into the SEALs. Their paths had split, but that bond from childhood had never died. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? Derek asked quietly. Marcus smiled faintly. Because sometimes it's better to show up than to promise. The others began scanning the perimeter, their training sharp, eyes catching every detail. The mail left untouched in a neighbor's box, the car parked 2 blocks down with tinted windows, the faint glow of a camera lens on the corner house. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with calm eyes, spoke up. They weren't acting alone. Someone's watching. Derek stiffened. You mean they'll come back? Marcus's jaw tightened. Oh, they'll try. But when they do, we'll be ready. The air was heavy with tension, but also with something else, solidarity. For the first time since moving into this house, Derek felt more than pride. He felt protected. The SEALs followed him inside, the creak of the wooden floor mixing with the smell of old coffee and fresh paint. Derek's boxes were still unpacked. Photos leaning against walls, his mother's old quilt folded neatly on the couch. This place, Derek said softly, it ain't just a house. It's my promise. To myself, to my mama, God rest her soul. She worked 2 jobs so I could have better, and when she passed, I swore I'd honor her by building a home. This home. The room fell silent. Finally, the scarred SEAL spoke. That's why you fight. Not for the walls, not for the porch swing, but for the promise. People like those fakes out there don't understand that. They only know greed. Marcus walked over to a framed photo of Derek's mom. He touched the corner gently. She'd be proud, and we're not going to let anybody take what she gave you. A knock at the door broke the moment. Slow, deliberate. Derek's stomach dropped. Marcus raised a hand, signaling the team. They moved into position without hesitation, two flanking the windows, one by the back door, another near the staircase. "Stay behind us," Marcus whispered to Derek. Derek nodded, his throat dry. Marcus opened the door a crack. Outside stood the same two imposters, but this time they weren't alone. A third man stood behind them, older, slick suit, eyes cold as steel. He carried himself like someone used to giving orders. The tall imposter forced a grin. "Told you we'd be back." The man in the suit stepped forward. His voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. "Mr. Johnson, you're occupying property that doesn't belong to you. Now, I'm a reasonable man. If you hand over the keys tonight, we won't escalate. Refuse and things get unpleasant." Marcus opened the door wider, revealing himself and the 5 seals standing like an unshakable wall. His voice dropped low, dangerous. "Unpleasant for who?" The suited man's smile faltered, just for a second. Then he recovered. "Ah, friends. Interesting. But this isn't your fight." Marcus stepped forward, his presence towering. "You're wrong. This is exactly our fight." The imposters shifted nervously, glancing at each other. The suited man's charm cracked, revealing the edge beneath. "You think muscle scares me? I've dealt with tougher." The scarred seal leaned forward, his eyes hard. "No, you've dealt with fakes and victims, but you've never dealt with us." For the first time, the man in the suit hesitated. He looked past Marcus at Derek, his voice dripping with disdain. "You don't deserve this house. People like you never do." Derek's hands curled into fists, but before he could speak, Marcus answered for him. "He deserves it more than you'll ever know, and you're not taking it. Not tonight, not ever." The street was silent again, tension wound so tight it could snap. The suited man narrowed his eyes, then motioned to his men. "We'll be seeing you, Mr. Johnson. Enjoy your little army while it lasts." They turned and walked away, fading into the night. But Derek knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He closed the door, his chest heaving. "They're not going to stop, are they?" Marcus shook his head. "No, but neither will we." The seals gathered around him, their presence filling the room with unspoken promise. They weren't just protecting a house. They were protecting dignity, legacy, and the unbreakable spirit of a man who refused to be erased. The night dragged on, heavy with silence. Derek sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped tight, the sound of the old clock ticking louder than usual. Across from him, Marcus and the seals sat like statues, alert, waiting, eyes sharp. They weren't men who feared the dark. They were men who thrived in it. But Derek couldn't hide his worry. "They're coming back, aren't they? I can feel it." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah. Men like that don't quit after the first shove. They'll push harder, nastier. That's who they are." The scarred seal leaned forward. "That's why we don't wait. We prepare." For the next hour, the house came alive with quiet movements. The seals checked the locks, positioned themselves near entry points, whispered strategies to each other. They weren't here for war. They were here to protect, but protection demanded readiness. Derek felt out of place among them. These were warriors forged in fire, and he was just a man clinging to a home. Yet, when Marcus looked at him, he saw no pity, only respect. "You've fought your battles too, Derek," Marcus said softly. "Maybe not with guns or uniforms, but with grit. Every long shift, every dollar saved, every door slammed in your face that you pushed through anyway. That's a battle, and you won." Derek's eyes stung. "But what if I lose this? What if they take it all?" Marcus shook his head. "Home isn't just walls. It's what you stand for. And if you keep standing, nobody can take it away." Before Derek could reply, headlights swept across the living room wall, multiple vehicles, doors slamming, footsteps crunching. "They're here," whispered one seal, already moving to position. Derek's breath caught in his chest. He peered through the blinds. 3 SUVs lined the street, men climbing out dressed in dark clothes. At least a dozen of them. The man in the suit stood at the front, arms folded, smirk fixed back on his face. Marcus straightened. "Stay behind us, Derek. Tonight we draw the line." The knock came, louder this time, fists pounding like a drumbeat of arrogance. "Open up, Johnson," the suited man's voice rang out. "This is your last chance." Marcus opened the door, not with fear, but with command. The SEALs flanked him, their stance unshakable. "You brought an army," Marcus said, his voice low but cutting. "Good. So did we." The suited man laughed, though his eyes flickered. 6 men against 12? You really think you stand a chance?" The scarred SEAL stepped forward, his gaze like steel. "It's not about numbers. It's about resolve. And yours will break before ours does." The suited man's smirk faltered. His men shifted uneasily, sensing the energy radiating off the SEALs, a presence honed in battles far more dangerous than this suburban standoff. Derek suddenly stepped forward, his voice shaking but strong. "You hear me? You don't scare me anymore. This is my home. My blood, my sweat, my mother's prayers built this. You can't steal it with papers and threats. Not tonight. Not ever." The words hit the air like a hammer. For the first time, Derek wasn't speaking like a man on defense. He was standing tall, unshakable. The SEALs stood taller behind him, a wall of resolve. The suited man's eyes narrowed. His men muttered, unsure. Finally, he spat on the ground. "This isn't over." Marcus stepped closer, his voice a final warning. "For your sake, it better be. Because if you ever set foot here again, you'll answer to us." A long silence. Then, slowly, the suited man turned, motioning to his crew. Reluctantly, they retreated, their bravado dissolving as they piled into their SUVs. Engines roared, and within minutes, the street was empty again. The night was still. Derek's chest heaved, his fists unclenching for the first time in hours. They're gone." Marcus put a firm hand on his shoulder. "No. You made them leave. We had your back, but your voice. That's what broke them." Derek felt tears welling in his eyes, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from pride, from relief, from finally believing he belonged. The scarred SEAL smiled faintly, something rare and raw. "You earned this home twice tonight, once when you bought it and again when you defended it." Derek let out a shaky laugh, wiping his face. "I never thought I'd be the kind of man who could stand up like that." Marcus looked at him firmly. "You always were. You just needed to see it." The SEALs stayed until dawn, drinking coffee at the kitchen table, swapping quiet stories, laughter breaking through the tension. By sunrise, the street looked the same as always. Quiet houses, kids' bikes in yards, but Derek knew it would never feel the same again. As they prepared to leave, Derek walked them to the porch. "How do I ever repay you?" he asked. Marcus smiled, his eyes tired but kind. "Live proud, stand tall, and when you see someone else about to lose what's theirs, be the man who shows up." Derek nodded, his heart heavy with gratitude. The SUVs pulled away, the morning light washing over the street. Derek stood on the porch alone, but not lonely. For the first time in his life, he felt unshakable, and he whispered to himself with a small smile, "This is my home, and I will always stand for it." Every day we're faced with moments where people, or life itself, try to push us down, to make us feel like we don't belong. Sometimes it's at work, sometimes it's in our neighborhoods, sometimes even in our own minds. But just like Derek, you don't have to face those battles alone. And when you stand your ground, when you refuse to let fear dictate your life, you discover strength you never knew you had. So remember this. Whether it's defending your home, your dreams, or your dignity, the moment you stand firm is the moment you win. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel. Black Saga, drop a comment, and hit the like button. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that they're stronger than they think.